Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Hello, my name is Assemblywoman Michaelle Solages, and I represent the portion of Western Nassau County on Long Island. Represent and hello to all the childcare providers on Long Island. I want to first hope that everyone is healthy and happy, and that you're getting through COVID with courage and hope. I want to first take an opportunity to say thank you to the Empire State Child Care Campaign for everything that they're doing, especially coming together and hosting this important roundtable to really discuss how we're going to move forward when it comes to childcare and COVID-19. I also want to say thank you to all the advocates, the parents, and caregivers. We see you, and today we are using our collective power to enact change. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And continue raising your voice. As we discuss moving New York forward, we have to acknowledge the difficulties that our communities are facing. And let me put it simply, if we do not move forward and secure our childcare providers, if we do not invest into childcare, then we cannot fully reopen our economy. Childcare is essential. And so today, we want to ensure that we're providing affordable, safe childcare to all our young people, because the brain science is there. When we give them that childcare, that high quality childcare, they become model citizens. And so from Long Island, the place I live and was born and bred, childcare is already a major concern. People are leaving Long Island because they do not have access to affordable childcare. And so to my partners in government in the New York State Congressional Delegation, thank you for your support and championing monies to childcare providers. We commend you on your work, and despite the obstacles, you are moving this issue forward, so thank you. With that, I have some great speakers, and it really is an honor to introduce our own New York Senator, Senator Gillibrand. I'm just very excited to be able to introduce you. So Senator, thank you for being on the call, and the microphone is all yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking you, Assemblymember Michaelle Solages, for your extraordinary leadership. And I want to thank the Empire State Campaign for Child Care for bringing us together on such an important issue and such an incredible group of leaders who are here for our roundtable. I'm really focused on this issue because New York is entering phase 4. More and more parents are beginning to go back to work. And as we get closer and closer to September, many schools are preparing for part-time attendance and more remote learning. That means more working parents than ever will be in need of childcare. Even before the pandemic, high quality and affordable childcare was out of reach for many New York families. The availability of infant and toddler care decreased in nearly every region of our state over the last decade. And the cost of a year of childcare is often more expensive than a year of in-state college tuition. The truth is, there's no recovering from this recession if parents can't get back to work. And there's no getting parents back to work without childcare. Throughout this crisis, childcare providers have been the essential workers behind the essential workers, taking care of the children of our doctors, nurses, and grocery store clerks so that they can take care of their patients and communities. But their industry was one of the hardest hit as businesses closed and people lost their jobs or started working from home. More than 355,000 people in the childcare industry have lost their jobs, and many providers who closed will not be able to reopen their doors without assistance. Childcare providers are committed to taking necessary health and safety precautions, but purchasing more supplies and PPE, reducing group sizes, modifying classroom spaces, sanitizing and cleaning, adjusting staffing, offering premium pay, that all costs money that these providers are not making. The Child Care is Essential Act will help provide $50 billion of funding to bolster our childcare industry. It will provide grant funding to cover new costs and help providers with rent, mortgage, utility payments, so that they can keep their doors open. Childcare is the linchpin that keeps the wheels of our economy turning. As parts of our country begin to reopen, we need to ensure that childcare services are accessible, affordable, and safe. I will continue calling for my Republican colleagues in the Senate to include this essential industry in our relief bill. And I'm so glad to see so many of you are invested in finding solutions that work for working parents. Thank you again for hosting this forum, and God bless you all. Stay safe.
Thank you, Senator. You truly are a national champion for women, children, and families everywhere. And we know yet you have a busy schedule, shaking up DC. So thank you again for coming on this call. We look forward to working with you, and thank you.
Absolutely. God bless everybody.
And so I also like to introduce our own state hero, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, who is really a champion for early childhood education. And so we thank her, and I'd like to introduce her to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Assemblymember Solages, and we have spent a lot of time together in your district. I know your constituents just adore you, as we all do, and I know that you're a tireless fighter in our state capitol. And I want to thank you for helping spearhead this, as well as the Empire State Campaign for Childhood. You are the rock stars. You are the ones who've been talking about this long before it became, part of the national conversation. But that's what societal change is all about. You think about this is the 100th anniversary of women winning the right to vote. I mean, how long did it take after women came up with the idea? It took 70 years. You talk about our fight for racial justice that's finally coming to a head today. We've been having these fights since the NAACP was formed in New York State in the early 1900s, and our civil rights movement. These movements take a long time, is my point. But this is one whose time has come. The realization that childcare is no longer a single family's problem, like it was when I was working for a senator, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan in Washington. My babies were born. I had nobody to watch them, no relatives. There's very few childcare centers, and so I had to give up my career and the income our family needed at the time in order to take care of the children. Fast forward, they're now adults. I don't know why they don't have their own kids yet, but that's another story. I'll be a great grandma someday, a wonderful grandma. But you know what? I've lived through this. And I wanted to think that by now, 100 years after we got the right to vote, that women would be truly equal. And the problem is that the weight of responsibility for childcare still in 2020 disproportionately falls on the shoulders of women. And there are a lot of good men out there who've been at our sides for these fights. They get it. But there's also the fact that the reality is that most women, even during the pandemic, have had to sacrifice their jobs if there's a two-income family. And that means that women are not advancing, that they're having to make those sacrifices, and they're not going to earn the income they could have. And so there are so many ripple effects to women not being able to take their rightful place in the workforce because they don't have child care that's affordable and accessible. So I have worked with many of you as the co-chair of the task force in New York City. I see a lot of your faces, and I thank you for never giving up the fight. But it is so great that our legislature, in a bipartisan way, male and female, Assembly and Senate, get it. This is how we make progress, but amplifying our voices collectively to send the message to Washington. And we have amazing members of Congress who will champion this for us, led by our very own Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is a working mom. I remember when she first went to office, she had a baby and she's expecting another one. I mean, she's lived this. And her passion to make sure that we have the right amount of money, and $50 billion is not too high for something that's as important as investing in childcare to liberate the women who want to get back to work and to make sure that the children have a good start in their early childhood experience. It's well worth the investment. So I am so proud to work with her to fight for this in Washington, to enlighten those who are still unenlightened. And I'll tell you, I'll close by saying, I think this pandemic has done a lot of things, mostly negative. It's been hard in the state of New York, the epicenter of the pandemic. But here's a couple positive takeaways. First of all, is a long overdue appreciation for the people the essential workers. We didn't realize we're essential until you went to a grocery store and you needed someone to cash you out, or the pharmacists who made sure you had your prescriptions, or the nurses who put on a uniform, left their children at home and ran into the flames that awaited them, not knowing what would happen with their own health. We finally have that appreciation for them, knowing that 68% of essential workers are women. But as the senator said, who's watching their kids when they're taking care of us? And also the realization that businesses, primarily male business owners who I've been trying to work with for a long time, they're starting to get it. When I ask them, the CEOs of major companies from Buffalo down to Manhattan, what is going to be one of the big barriers you face when we're trying to reopen the economy? And without prompting, this is a true story. Several men have said to me now, it's childcare. If we don't have someone to help with the kids, particularly in the fall, if schools are not open 5 days a week, what's going to happen to their workforce? And that's the aha moment that we've been waiting for. It's there, and all of us have to seize this opportunity to continue the national conversation, but not just talk, to walk away with a lot more money to invest in these child care centers, providers, our advocates, and the children ultimately. So thanks for hosting this, and I'm real excited to just have everybody else, all of you always have, but the rest of the country's finally waking up. It's long overdue, and I thank all of my friends and my advocates on this call, and our elected officials. You're my champions, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. My name is Dede Hill, and I'm Policy Director for the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy. We are a statewide advocacy organization working tirelessly to advance policies that improve the lives of New York children and families. I am also a co-facilitator of the Empire State Campaign for Childcare. We are a statewide advocacy organization that is fighting to equitably expand access to childcare to all New York families that need it. I want to first thank Assemblymember Solages for her tireless advocacy on behalf of New York children and families, and for bringing us all together today to talk about the urgent need for the federal government to include robust $50 billion at least in funding for childcare in the next COVID relief package. And I want to thank Senator Gillibrand, who had to run back to the fight in Washington, but for elevating the needs of New York families and children in Washington, and for her co-sponsorship of the ChildcareIsEssential Act, which is the act that includes the $50 billion that we all know is necessary to stabilize the childcare industry that is reeling after the impacts of the pandemic, and to support families as they get back to work. And finally, I really want to thank Lieutenant Governor Hochul. She has been such a persistent voice for New York families, for New York women, for all New Yorkers. She is such a leader and an amazing partner. She is a chair of the Governor's Child Care Availability Task Force, and I've had the honor of working with her on that task force. And it's been a long haul, but we have made amazing progress. So thank you for being a partner. Before I introduce our next panelist, and we have a lot, I also want to acknowledge that we have more than 200 New Yorkers watching from home and cheering us on from home, and carrying the message of the need to support childcare from home, and thank you. And I think the numbers, and we only sort of got this together late last night, and already, more than 200 have joined us. It's testament to what a critical issue this is for New York families. A few logistics. We're going to save some time at the end of this event to take questions. If you have questions, just put them into the Q&A box, and we will try to get them answered at the end. I am now pleased to introduce two New York parents who will speak to some of the challenges they have faced parenting and working and juggling it all during a pandemic. And so first we are going to hear from Paulette Duran, and she is from Staten Island, New York. She's mother of a 6-year-old and a paralegal at an employment law firm. Paulette?
Hello everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Paulette Duran. I'm a mother to a 6-year-old named Naomi. I heavily depend on childcare and the Department of Education for my toddler. I am a working parent. I work full-time from home and have had to juggle working 8 hours a day along with homeschooling my child. It is by far the most difficult thing I have had to do in my life and very scary. New York City, we're actually in the beginning of phase 4, and yet 1 through 4, any phase that we have succumbed to does not alleviate this constant fear every day that our childcare providers are any closer to having the financial assistance they need, having the teachers, having the medical necessities in order for us to open childcare, in order for us to return, in order for me to return to work. I, like millions of other mothers, do not have any other options. So, and my employment, my office, have started scheduling employees to return back to work. I am not able to even think of a concept where I am scheduling to go back to work because we are in limbo. We are scared. We desperately need for the federal government to have our backs, to provide our child care providers, our mothers, with adequate, with money, with all the resources so we could reopen safely. So we're able to return back to the economy, because without the economy, without childcare, there is no economy. And I have even had the scary conversation with my husband about possibly not returning to work if we do not have the adequate resources that we need for our childcare providers in our schools. It is absolutely important, and I pray that they come through for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulette. And I just want to ask everyone who is not speaking, all the panelists, if you could just mute yourselves so that we can all hear each other. So next up, we are going to hear from Beth Starks. She is joining us from Mayville, New York. She is a mother of a 16, 13, and 7-year-old. And she is also executive director of the Chautauqua Lake Child Care Center. She's an assistant professor at Jamestown Community College, and she wears many other hats, but today she's talking to us principally as a parent.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm here today with Ella, my youngest. She's 7, and I appreciate all of you being here and talking about childcare. So, although I have gone through this pandemic as a provider, I've also gone through all of this as a parent as well. And I want to speak to you today as a parent and tell you my story. So being a child care provider, we were deemed essential, and my center remained open the entire time. We went down to probably 25% capacity. I am also the parent of a child. My 13-year-old has special needs and has a pre-existing condition, so he could not be around germs. And so my ex-husband and I made the tough decision, as he was working as well and not able to stay home in quarantine. We put all 3 of my children in quarantine with my parents, who are retired. And so although I was going to my center every day to provide care for other essential workers. My own children were at my parents' house, and I was away from them for 6 weeks. And I saw all of them every day from 6 feet away outside, while taking care of other people's children so that they could go to work. So that has been difficult. It was a difficult time. They are now back with me, and we're trying still really hard to be careful and keep them safe. And in addition to providing the care that we can at the center. I do feel very comfortable providing the care. I do want to speak as a provider for a moment, that a lot of my teachers have been nervous but have stayed working, and it's really important that that you hear their story and also recognize the important part that childcare plays in our economic development. So I thank everyone for the support of childcare providers and parents who are trying to work as we reopen. We appreciate the support, and I will say on behalf of all providers that we definitely need your support, and we need funding, and more than anything, we need operational support right now. A lot of the providers in my county, over 50%, have closed, and we need your support moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for sharing your story and for your tireless advocacy. And now we are going to hear from three dedicated childcare providers about the many challenges that they have faced providing care during the pandemic and as we inch towards recovery. So first up, we are going to hear from Alicia Marks. She runs the Marks of Excellence Child Care Center in Amityville. Alicia?
Hi, Dede. Thank you, everybody, for having me. And I want to thank all of our essential workers for all that they do. And I speak on behalf of our providers and our families. You know, childcare is essential, and we need essential funds. Childcare is the main communicative vessel that connects our communities, our families, to our society and to our economy. And we don't not only take care of the child, we take care of families. That's why we're licensed by the Department of Children and Family Services. And when our families have crises, we help the entire family. I had been a former employee of a municipality, the town of Babylon, and I couldn't have done what I do without the support of the town of Babylon. And I say that to say that we were already strapped with crises prior to this pandemic, and it continues to a whole different level. Providers were experiencing minimum wage increases every single year. We didn't have that community cushion to go into for a rainy day that said, oh, we're going to take funds and we're going to use this for PPE and masks and thermometers and additional things that we now have to purchase. We were living payroll to payroll, paycheck to paycheck. And so in this pandemic, I don't see what people don't understand. The cookie jar is empty. The combs have no teeth, and we need to be able to be competitive in this arena in terms of employing our employees, of which I have 34. And I can no longer do this happy dance that says this is the place to work. We need to put finances behind what these essential workers deserve. And, we have been traumatized by this pandemic, but we always come to the forefront in order to do what we need to do in the name of families. But it's our providers that you can go to that can tell you what our society's needs are. You want to know? You talk to a child care provider. And we have unfunded mandates consistently, always asking a provider to go out of their way to spend for quality childcare, continuity of care, quality stars. We meet the margin in all of those areas, except for financial gain. We do it because we love children, but it's a dangerous place to be if you're not going to be able to fund the safety needs that we need moving forward. Childcare is on the verge of collapsing. Childcare needs funds. It's plain and simple. And in order to do this in a safe way, in a nutritional way, and in the way that we know that our child care centers are the safe havens for our families, it doesn't happen without putting your money where your mouth is. And I just want to say that on behalf of all our providers, that you are essential. But the sooner we get the message that we are essential and that we need essential funds, the better, because September is around the corner. We don't even know what's going to happen in terms of school districts. For myself, my daycare is over 90% subsidized, and I can no longer do more with less. We cannot keep increasing the cost of living and keeping us at a standstill where we have to take money from our pockets that are empty as it is. So I'm asking, I'm pleading again, year after year, and I hope that the Lieutenant Governor can pass this along, that we are pleading in order to keep these families at bay, because we now see the difference between the haves and the have-nots, and this gap is a continental divide. It's not just a gap any longer. Please give us what we need in order to take care of these children in the proper way. We are essential. We need essential funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. I am now going to turn the floor over to Juliana Pinto McKeen. She is the former director of Honeybird's Play School in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York.
Hey, well, thanks for being here. My name is Juliana Pinto McKeen. I was the co-founder and director of Honeybird's Play School in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I'm also a member of the Brooklyn Coalition of Early Childhood Programs and Empire State Campaign for Child Care Action Team. As a DACA recipient, I didn't have a lot of options in 2014. Creating my own business was a way to further my career and serve my community in a way that wasn't available to me otherwise. Since opening, Honeybirds has served nearly 80 families, some of which have sent multiple children to our school. We are a group family daycare located in a residential space. We served about 12 children per day and averaged 16 families per school year. Including myself, we employed 4 educators. Before the pandemic, before our city shut down, my program had been open for 6 years. We were fully enrolled for last year and for this upcoming school year, and we had a very healthy wait list. We were a recognizable name in our community. In February 2020, we were accredited as a Waldorf institution by the Waldorf Early Childhood Association of North America, which is something that we worked so hard for years before. We made the decision to close in March. Hello? Okay. We made the decision to close in early March because our community just didn't feel safe. We immediately pivoted and we started offering digital content as well as weekly support to parents and guardians. Right away, about 1/2 of the families in our program lost income and were unable to keep paying tuition. I applied for PPP funding as soon as the application was available. I didn't receive it the first round, but I did the second round. PPP allowed me to keep paying my amazing staff who worked the entire time that we weren't able to operate inside the building. As PPP funding was running out and the fall was approaching, we began to plan for a reopening. In talking to the families that had been committed to my program for this fall, about 45% dropped out, citing changes in income, changes in their living arrangements, and health concerns. I tried to reopen for summer camp to bridge the gap between the PPP funds and the beginning of our new school year, but families were reluctant to send their children, understandably so. When our PPP funds ran out on July 2nd, our assistant teacher let me know that she had been offered a position as a caregiver that seemed more stable and more safe during this time. She felt she needed to take that position as her partner was about to be laid off. She had to do what was necessary for her family, and we totally understood. At this point, we had about 55% of the necessary enrollment and no assistant teacher. Per the Department of Health, we needed another adult in the classroom, but we did not have the funds to pay for that other person. The remaining staff and I had a heart-to-heart. We realized that we did not feel safe opening at full capacity, but we also knew that our school could not financially make it if we were not full. This is a catch-22 that a lot of schools find themselves in. It may not be safe to open in the way that was budgeted before the pandemic, but they can't make it otherwise. Childcare has no margins. At the beginning of the pandemic, it was estimated that 50% of childcare programs would have to close. 4 weeks ago, I did not think my program was going to be one of those. It all happened so fast. PPP was a lifeline, but as soon as those funds ran out, we were floundering. The funds earmarked in the CARES Act were not fast acting enough to save us. The hard truth is that our communities, our economies, will not be able to go back to work without childcare, and childcare is on the brink of collapsing. The industry needs a bailout, and it needs a bailout now. Without a serious influx of funds, many other early ed and childcare programs will follow in the footsteps of my school. Please don't let us down. Please don't let the families and children down. This crisis is bigger than my program, and it's bigger than my community. There will always be people that can afford a tutor or a nanny, but those aren't the families that we're really talking about here. There are education gaps that disproportionately plague low-income families and families of color. Without the necessary and appropriate funding to save early ed, the gap between the haves and the have-nots will only become wider. Failure to act today is a generational crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Huli. Now I'm going to turn things over to Sofia Mado, and she operates 2 child care centers in Western New York. And that's just a scratch of the surface of her long history in early childhood education. But please tell your story.
Hello, Dede. Hello, everyone. And thank you for having me, and thank you for having this panel. We're so happy to have somebody hear us and possibly maybe help out or act upon what we have to say. There are so many nice and emotional stories, especially from Alicia and Juliana, and we all have them. And just to tell you a little of my story, I'm 33 years in this business, started in New York City to mostly take care of my child, my son, who was a little boy at that time, and I wanted to be with him while growing up. And in 1992, I moved into Western New York, where I'm still. And this is where I started operating several centers. Currently, I operate 2 facilities. I had 4 facilities altogether, close to the end of the career, but forever fighting for our industry. I also belong to a group called Child Care Action Team. We have formed the group almost a year ago, and it is formed and made up of professionals in early childhood, whether owners, directors, parents, or people who are friends of early childhood. And we have formed that group with a mission to help our industry and to fight for the goals that we have, and to fight for all injustices that have piled for years in our society, in our industry. And we are hoping to have a voice together with your help. The CCAT, the group that I'm representing today, in addition to being a provider, is also looking into finding results. And from my point, today I'm going to talk about my issues that are affecting my business, but that is also happening with everybody else with more or less similarities. Our problem didn't become with the pandemic. It was already there. As Alicia was mentioning, we have every year a minimum wage increase that we're facing, and we're all having a difficulty reacting to that because we don't know how to maintain our feasibility. Then came pandemic, which immediately affected my program, lowering my enrollment to 15% of my capacity was just what I had in the very beginning. I kept running the facility. As I said, I'm 33 years in this business and have emergency funds piled up, which not many centers have for this purpose, and it worked very well. But it didn't really help much. Of course, I did get a PPP loan. I did spend it. I used all the funds that we had. We were pouring from one center to another center, trying to balance finances. And right now we're hoping that the enrollment increases, which it has happened somewhat, but not to the point of our security, and not to the point that we know for sure that we're going to stay open and running. Our tuition income was lower, reduced to 62%, and left us in operation with only 38% of funds that we would earn. This is quite a little money to run and to pay anybody. The other costs are also something that we have to say. They're not only tuition for operation and for paying payroll. This is the liability of our insurance. Our insurance is equally expensive, actually more expensive, even though we pay for it for every child that we have in the center. While during COVID, we were reduced, and pandemic is not one of the reasons to reduce the insurance that we pay for our centers. The cost of fringe benefits, utilities, liability insurance, that was all the same, and even higher. So even though our payroll realistically was reduced to about 50%, our staff was laid off due to lack of work. I had a good number of staff laid off with the intention to call them back when the work becomes available. In the meantime, our unemployment insurance fund has completely drained. We have no more funds in our unemployment insurance. So we're really panicking on what is going to happen next year when we get new rates to pay for that. And we had to do something about helping ourselves. So we decided to increase our rate for 12%. You remember, we had to add up the minimum wage cost, we had to add up the cost of operation, and 12% was not really making anything. Just find out that our parents can't afford that. They cannot pay those 12%. They cannot pay even what our regular rates are. And they were struggling anyway. We're often donating childcare to many of our parents. We are in service business. We work with hearts and souls. We are not just cutthroat business where you pay or you are out. We cannot do that to our parents. They lose the job. We help them get on their feet and keep their children while they look for a job. This is the kind of industry that cannot work with pure math. So
thank you, Sofia. You have underscored all of the issues, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. I'm going to turn things over to some of the other elected officials that were so gracious to join us tonight. Many of them had to jump from the legislative floor to be here. And so it's my honor to introduce two powerful voices for children and families from our New York State congressional delegation. And first, I'm going to introduce Congresswoman Meng. She is from the 6th District, serving Queens and other parts of New York City. And then after Congresswoman Meng. We'll hear from Congressman Espallat from the 13th District, serving Harlem, East Harlem, other parts of New York City. I want to underscore that both are co-sponsors of the Child Care is Essential Act. We thank you so much for your leadership and for spearheading this amazing and essential bill. And I also just want to note that we have another member of our New York State congressional delegation who could not join us tonight, is Congresswoman Nita Lowey, who is actually the lead on that bill. And I want to hold that up. New York State is right. You know, we are right there at the front of this fight. So thank you. So Congresswoman Meng.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you to our Assemblymember Solages for her leadership, her compassion, and her tremendous efforts on this issue. It's an honor to be here with you. I see many of my colleagues, Assemblymember Ellen Jaffee, who I was privileged to serve with, one of the hardest working members I know. We were dinner buddies for a while, so it's always good to see her. Senator Gennardis and Senator Borrello, and I apologize if I'm missing anyone else. And of course to our Senator Gillibrand and Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, thank you for joining us today and for their leadership as well. I just want to say a big thank you to all the parents, the childcare providers, and everyone who plays a role in making sure that our kids are safe and healthy on a normal basis, but especially during this really tough time. I represent parts of Queens, New York in Washington, D.C. And as you know, Queens was really, for much of the time where COVID was so serious here, Queens was the epicenter of the epicenter. You've seen lots of images of, you know, hospitals like Elmhurst Hospital and heard many of the stories, heartbreaking stories of what families to essential workers, what everyone's gone through. I'm a parent of two young kids, two kids in our local public schools. However, I am fortunate to have an infrastructure of relatives nearby who help me tremendously. And I know that many of you have been incredibly frustrated, as am I, with the lack of Congress moves too slow. We'll just say it in non-fancy terms. And I know that. I work in Congress. And it is frustrating. It is frustrating to me as a New Yorker, as a mom, to know that 60 days have passed since Congress and the House Democrats passed the HEROES Act, which had a lot of good pieces that would help New Yorkers tremendously. Some of these pieces which you know about, but I just wanted to mention, they're some of my priorities. You know, one is just basic homeschooling and being able to help the 12 million students across the country who don't have access to the internet. This is not just a rural issue. This is an issue that affects everyone from rural to urban communities and many people in between. In New York City, 30% of our students don't have access to the internet. And all of a sudden during this COVID pandemic, where so many students are at home, it's a real issue that many people have to deal with. And we want to make sure that our kids aren't falling behind. I know we talked a little bit about hazard pay. We want to make sure, and the HEROES Act has much of what is really needed in New York, where our essential and our frontline workers, from our healthcare workers to service workers to transit operators and grocery store workers, people who have literally risked their lives, put their lives on the line to take care of our communities and our families. And so we are still fighting for that. I'm frustrated because there has been stimulus money passed in Congress. However, it still does not yet help people who don't have Social Security numbers, for example. So there are a lot of people just in the city alone, like 200,000 people who have been left out of what Congress has done so far. So we will continue to fight. We know that there's been conversations with the Senate today. I'm hearing bits and pieces from leadership, from Twitter, quite frankly. So hopefully we'll be able to get to accomplish some of that within the next few weeks. And so I wanted to also mention one of the earlier packages that Congress put together, which was the CARES Act. It provided about $3.5 billion for the Child Care and Development Block Grant, which funds child care assistance for low-income families and essential workers, continues to pay child care providers who accept subsidies during this period of closure or had really low attendance, depending what part of the country you're in. And earlier this month, the House passed the Moving Forward Act, H.R. 2, which included funds to help child care providers make necessary modifications to their facilities in the wake of COVID-19. And I know, and you all know, that these were just very important, but just first steps. We know that it's not enough. And I want to tell you that your voices are making a difference. Assemblymember Solages and many of her colleagues wrote a letter to us in the past few weeks to the entire New York delegation, making sure, I'm sure some of you had something to do with that, making sure that we are adequately funding this important industry of childcare providers. And I want you to know that your voices, because you have been so proactive, making sure that these issues, which might not be the sexiest of issues as we're talking about COVID-19, that they remain on the front lines of our priorities and our legislation. And so I think Senator Gillibrand mentioned some of these already, but next week, next Monday or Tuesday, we are voting on two important childcare bills. Childcare is Essential Act, which would provide the $50 billion that many of you asked for in grant funding to childcare providers to stabilize this sector and to support providers and help many of the problems that many of you have mentioned today as we safely reopen. The Childcare for Economic Recovery Act would make critical investments in childcare and infrastructure improvements and provide tax relief for families, providers, and employers. And for the first time in a decade, it would increase funds for the Child Care Entitlement to States program. So under these bills, New York would get about over $51 million for the social services block grant, which would help also our essential workers to get child and dependent care. So I just want to say thank you. Many of you I'm meeting for the first time. Please don't hesitate to reach out directly to our office or through your amazing legislators in the state assembly and the state senate. We work very closely together, and I really appreciate your efforts. And I know it's been really hard. We will get through this. I hope that everyone continues to stay safe.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And now Congressman Espallat.
Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Grace. Grace is obviously doing a fantastic job here as well in Washington. I see some familiar faces from my days in the state assembly. I see Assemblywoman Solange and Jaffee. And is that Assemblymember Hevesy with a beer? He was just a baby when he came up. You could have taken care of him in one of the daycares, but he's got a beer now. So he's a great guy and a great legislator. All have been doing him for test. Some of the senators that are here as well. Thank you for your work in Albany. I know I spent many years there, and I know how difficult it is. But you're getting some good legislation passed out of the state capitol. And as our Congresswoman Meng mentioned, there are two pieces. First of all, let me say that daycare providers are very special to me. My mom was a child care provider, and when she finished after many years, because there was no organization like this, she was left with nothing really, but the love of the children that she cared for. And some of them became lawyers and doctors, and they're still in contact with her, and she's like a second mom to many of them. but you guys are teachers, right? Because you provide education for children at such a critical age. You're also nurses because you're there when they have a fever, when mom and dad are not around. And you're also small business people, mainly women, small business women. Many of you are also small business women. So you juggle all these things at once, and you're exceptional. And now, during this critical time of the pandemic and the post-pandemic, you're entrusted with a critical responsibility, because now for the economy to open in the future, whenever that will happen, we have to ensure that you're open. We can't do it without you. You have to be available and open and safe, and provided all the tools necessary to ensure that our children are taken care of the right way, and that you're safe and they are safe as well. And so this is so critical to me and to all of us. And I know that we've passed the CARES Act and the HEROES Act, which is huge, $3 trillion. And by the way, we also have their help for the state and the municipalities. And so if we are able to get that done, and it's waiting on the Senate to act, it will prevent the state and the municipalities from cutting back on essential services. And so this is so critical to the state and the city. For me, the city of New York and the neighborhoods that I represent, which are Harlem, East Harlem, Hamilton Heights, Washington Heights, Inwood, and the Northwest Bronx. So we have these two additional pieces of legislation that will be taken up very soon, which is HR 7027, the Childcare is Essential Act, which will provide $50 billion. And that sounds like a lot of money, but believe me, it's not for the entire country. And we also have HR 7327, which is the Child Care for Economic Recovery Act, which would also provide, in addition to $850 million, another $10 billion for a child care development fund. This is essential service, not just for the economy, but for the safety and the health of our children and yourself. And so for me, this is just so important that we could not move forward without this. And so I am a co-sponsor of those two bills. And I'm very optimistic that they will be favorably passed in a few days, and then we'll be pushing on the Senate to do the same thing. And it's important, and believe me, I know that this is very bipartisan out here in Washington. It's very partisan out here in Washington. But I know that as the pandemic continues to sweep in real harsh ways, other states in the country like Texas and Florida and Arizona, that other members, both in the House and in the Senate, have to go back there and feel, you know, what's happening in their respective districts, and they will have to answer to that. And I am optimistic that this will force the hand to ensure that both are parts, if not the entire HEROES Act, in some way, shape, or form is adopted by the Senate, but also that this legislation that will be passed in the next few days will be taken on also by the Senate. I think it's important that we do that as a country, and I think it's important that we support you, the child care providers, that in addition to taking care of our children, are teachers, nurses, and also small business people. So thank you for everything you do for us, and thank you for the care that you provide for our children. You know, very often you spend more time with the children than the parents themselves. And so a parent has to be assured and has to be confident that he or she will leave their children in a safe and caring and nurturing environment. And you provide that. You just need the tools, you need the resources. You can't do it empty-handed. I think these two pieces of legislation will add to that. It's not the end. I think we're gonna need to do more. we really don't know where these are uncharted waters. And we really don't know whether there will be another wave of the pandemic, whether it will be more severe in other states, as it has shown that it is in Florida, for example. But we're optimistic that with you, our children will get the care that they need. And so thank you so much. We really value your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. And before I turn things over to our next group of speakers, I want to just acknowledge that in our chat, there's a lot of really lively and interesting conversation about, heartfelt conversation about the concerns of childcare providers and safety issues, which the Congressman just alluded to. And I think that there are a lot of, that's probably something we need a whole nother forum to really dig into. But I think we know that one thing is certain is that we need significant investment, at least $50 billion from the federal government, and probably more dollars than that as well, to enable childcare when it is safe to reopen in the safest manner possible. And that is going to necessarily involve operating with significantly reduced enrollment, with extra cleaning, extra PPE, and following all of the best public safety protocols. We know that that cannot be done without significant public investment. That much is certain. But then we also need to have ongoing conversations to make sure that that childcare can reopen safely. So I wanted to. That's such a critical piece of the conversation. So now I am thrilled to introduce some of our other New York State legislative champions, along with Assemblymember Solages. First, we're going to hear from Assemblymember Ellen Jaffee, and she is chair of the Assembly Committee on Children and Families. In this crowd, this is dangerous to say, but she may be the fiercest advocate for childcare in the entire state of New York. She is dogged and persistent and unflagging in her devotion, and we are so grateful for her leadership. So take it away, Assemblymember Jaffee.
Oh, thank you so much, Dede, and thank you all for coming together for really focusing on this very important issue. As chair of the Committee on Children and Families, and actually the creator, and I wrote the legislation, and we had it, the Child Care Availability Task Force, which is really speaking working with the governor in terms of this issue. I know how important the quality childcare is and early education is for children's healthy development, for their future, for their stability. I'm a former teacher, and I can tell you that it's something that I'm so aware of, children in those environments where they're really working in a very positive environment, emotionally and even academically, it gives them, and the families, to have stability for the families so that they can achieve economic security and independence. So today, I've heard from so many that are so important, and regularly I hear from parents who are being called back to work and are worried that they may not be able to find the safe and quality childcare for their children, and to be able to have that established so that everybody would be in a very positive environment. We also heard from the child care providers who are required to provide the care so safely, but without the necessary support to do so. They need more support. They need more so that they can function in a way that really provides this opportunity and assures that you have the funding for good workers as well. So I want to thank you all for your concerns and for sharing your concerns. It's really important. There can be no recovery from this pandemic without the child care as we continue to safely reopen the need for childcare is going to be even greater moving forward. That's something that has certainly been challenging and will continue to be challenging. And that's why I'm right at this time, I am truly calling for the immediately investment of the remaining $70 million in emergency childcare CARES Act funds. We have to move forward with that to provide to give to the providers that are already open the funding they need to make those classrooms, to be able to assure the staff and the students are safe, is something that we need to work together and continue to push for. And of course, to my colleagues in the New York congressional delegation and the New York State legislature, but in the congressional delegation for sure, I'm urging you to pass the Child Care is Essential Act. That is so important. That provides $50 billion that really will make such a big difference. And it will be for our childcare to assist and provide our childcare providers, assist them and the families and the rest of the nation safely to reopen and recover in the wake of the pandemic. This is so essential. It really is about the future. It really means that it is something that is so important for our youth, for our families, for our communities. We can't look the other way. We have to move forward and continue to work together. So I thank you all for your advocacy. I truly appreciate that, and we'll continue to work in that path to help these children and families. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblymember Jaffee. And now I am pleased to introduce Assemblymember Andy Hevesy. He is chair of the Assembly Social Services Committee. And yeah, I can't get the image of you, sort of with your beard, like in the child care center. Anyway, but
Yeah,
it's so glad to have you.
I don't think the congressman's still here, but it was a strange thing. I didn't go through puberty until my 10th year in the assembly. And that happened, and I've moved on. I was going to tell, I don't know if Grace is here either, but my wise guy response to the congressman was, I've been in the assembly for a long time, and my father was too. And there was a time at the beginning of my career when I said to my dad, "Hey, Dad, there's a lot of members who just disappear, and I think they're not intellectually capable of keeping up with the assembly. What happens to them?" And he said, "Well, son, they go to Congress." So that would have been my response for Senator Espallat, but I miss him.
The beard doesn't look too good on you.
You did hear it. Good for you. Good to see you, Adriano. And by the way, if you see Joe Morelli, give him a hug for me. I love that man.
Will do.
Thank you. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to be relatively brief because you don't need to hear from me. You have Ellen Jaffee leading the charge in the Assembly and Mickey Solages, two champions. I am privileged to play a supporting role. I also do want to mention a couple of other my colleagues who are hugely important to this movement. Donna Lupardo from the Assembly, also Dede Barrett, as well as Senators Montgomery and Persaud. And I know I have a number of senators here, Mr. Borrello, Senator Gunardis, and Senator Kennedy. I'm very happy that you're here, but I need to admonish you, guys, get back to work. There are a number of Hevesy bills that need to be passed in the Senate. I don't know what you're doing here. Let me get to the substance right here. No more joking around. Childcare, we're in a crisis. 25% of the child care centers are down. 30% of the school-age child daycare centers are down, closed. So we need this money. And I know we're all advocating for it, and that's the goal of this, to push Congress. But I have faith in our federal partners. But I will ask you at some point in the near future, we're going to reach back out to all of you with Mickey and Ellen leading, because the state is currently sitting on $69 million worth of CARES Act funding that we're not letting loose. Simple. We have to get that money out the door to help the providers who close get back on track, and also the providers who are barely trying to survive just because they have new social distancing requirements. So there's twofold. I understand this is all about the federal government, and I'm with you and I'm here to support it, but please keep an eye out. We're going to reach out to every one of you. We're going to need your help to push our executive, Governor Cuomo, to release the money that he has on hand, because simply put, if you do not have a robust, healthy, and accessible childcare industry, you're not recovering from a pandemic the way you want to. It's that important. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to participate today.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Really appreciate your support always. And next to speak will be, and I'm just making sure that he is here because I can't see all my windows, but I believe that Senator Robert Jackson is on, and we are so thrilled to have him. He is has been a tireless fighter for fair funding for New York schools, you know, really a leader in education, a leader for all of our kids. He's also the chair of the Senate Committee on Cities. Really pleased that the senator could join us. Unless he's not here, which is possible. I had gotten a note that he was. Okay, well, we're gonna move on. Maybe he will join us a little later. And so next up is another amazing senator, Senator Tim Kennedy, hailing from Western New York. He is chair of the Committee on Transportation. He is also perhaps more relevant to our conversation today. He's a father of a few young children and has always been a champion of childcare and all things children and families. So thank you, Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Dede Hill. Thanks to the Empire State Campaign for Childcare, to my great friend Sherry Scavone from the Western New York Women's Foundation, to my dear friend, former state senator Adriano Espallat, a warrior in the fight, as well as Congresswoman Meng. Thank you both for your leadership, to Senator Gillibrand and Lieutenant Governor Hochu, to all of the extraordinary leaders that we work with each and every day. And of course, my hat's off to my colleagues, of course, Senator Jackson, Gunardis, Borrello, on my side, but then on the other side in the Assembly, Assemblywoman Solages, Jaffee, and Hevesi, who we've heard from. Thank you all for your leadership. But this is all about the families that we serve collectively and the vision that we all share to help these families. And we all know that safe and quality and affordable, accessible childcare is absolutely essential to a strong and thriving economy. And we know that we have had issues with childcare pre-COVID-19, but they've all been exacerbated during COVID-19. And we have an obligation to deal with these issues and resolve them as leaders and as partners in this struggle, in the fight, as we help to lift everybody up. The only way we're going to give people the opportunity to access the jobs that we are growing is by allowing for this accessible and affordable childcare. And there's way too many people in this state where we call ourselves a progressive state, and we are, but there's way too many people in this state, majority women and single moms, that cannot afford childcare, and in many cases cannot afford to go to work where they want to go to work and earn a career and help their families and grow their career and livelihoods and quality of life, because of the cost is so astronomical of childcare, to the extent that oftentimes it outweighs the salary that they may be paid on the other end. So we have to make it economical for individuals as well as accessible. So I just want to applaud our congressional delegation that are here on this call, that have touched on the CARES Act and the HEROES Act. That $3.5 billion is essential. We all know, and you all know, that it's just the beginning, that hopefully the Senate will do the right thing at the federal level and pass that robust $3 trillion HEROES Act that really address these issues. We also know that New York State has funding that we can still tap into, not to mention about $164 million for child care scholarships for essential workers that's been committed as well. So we have our work cut out for us. I'm really proud to just be in this fight with all of you. One of the biggest issues we've been dealing with over many years has been facilitated enrollment. It's sort of done as a patchwork here in New York State to expand a number of individuals who actually qualify for childcare from below the poverty line to a level higher above the poverty line, about 200% above the poverty line. So in expanding that amount of individuals that qualify by expanding the percentage above the poverty line, we bring in an entire population of individuals that are really living paycheck to paycheck and just getting by and are on the cusp of falling into the red. So again, to all of you that work so hard each and every day, thank you for your efforts. And we've got our work cut out for us, but you can count on myself and the Western New York Buffalo delegation to be there with you as well. And I just want to recognize one other member of the Assembly who's a true partner of mine coming out of Buffalo, and that's the Majority Leader, Crystal Peoples-Stokes. She and I work in tandem, hand in hand, to deal with these issues out of Buffalo, which we all know has our own economic issues to deal with. So in putting people back to work and making sure that everyone has an equal shot, we have to make sure that quality, affordable childcare is at the front end of the conversation. We're going to do our part here. So again, thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. And I understand that Senator Jackson now can speak. He has been with us. He just was unable, he didn't, yeah. Are you, thank you, welcome.
Well, thank you. Obviously, as Ted indicated, we're up in Albany now and in session. So but I had to come in to say that that I support, obviously, members of Congress working hard to try to bring the type of federal money to us. But then again, we must have a backup plan. We hope and expect that money to come through, but our backup plan is right now, some of the CARES money has indicated there's, I think, $70 million that needs to be released by the governor. So anything that I can do as a state senator that represents 13 miles of Manhattan, including Marble Hill, Inwood, Washington Heights, West Harlem, and I go to 26th Street and 5th Avenue, I would do everything that I can to join with my colleagues in the Assembly and Senate and all of the activists in order to move the agenda to make sure that happens, because obviously childcare is a fundamental aspect that we have to have in order to go to school, in order to go to work, and all of the things that are necessary when we have children. And my youngest is 33, but I do have grandkids that live in Virginia, so I do know about childcare from the experiences that I had going back. And let me tell you, we used to juggle like 3 balls in the air when you have children, you know, and, you know, especially if they get sick, then if you have a sister or a brother or an aunt or an uncle or a grandmother or grandfather, you tend to take them over to your relative's house in order to deal with the situation. So I want you to know that the activists, if you tell us what we need to do, and I'll follow the lead of what you have to say and what you want, and my colleagues in the Assembly, I will be fighting for you in the State Senate. I'm a fighter for education, and as you know, childcare is just not about, it's not about babysitting. Babysitting is just one little aspect, but childcare is more than that. Childcare is about taking care of our children, educating our children. I remember when my daughter was 2 years old and she was in the childcare center, and she learned so much. At 2 years old, she would, you know, sing songs and talk about old MacDonald at 2 years old. And I'm amazed at how much kids are like sponges, and they learn so much from their teachers and their godparents, in essence, because that's who they are. They're acting as their parents when we're not there. So just let me know. I am here. I'm not going anywhere. I plan on being around for a while, and I'm a fighter. I'm not afraid to speak up. So thank you.
We know that. Thank you, Senator. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Senator George Borrello, and he's coming to us, well, actually, he's probably coming to us right now from Albany, but he represents New York's 57th district, which includes Chautauqua and Allegheny and Livingston counties. And this is, you know, every time we need someone to come and speak about childcare and to speak on behalf of New York kids and families, Senator Borrello says, Absolutely, I'll be there. So we are just so appreciative of your support and leadership. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Dede. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here again tonight. I'd also like to thank Assemblymember Solages for putting this together. All my colleagues, I think we are united on this. This is not a partisan issue, and this is truly about how do we rebuild our economy. As I said before, you cannot build a home without a solid foundation, and we cannot rebuild our economy here in New York State and throughout the nation without the solid foundation of childcare. It is a critical component for us to be able to get people back to work and to get our economy working again. And I think all of my fellow colleagues in the Senate and the Assembly have said the same thing. The governor needs to release the remaining money that he has. This was emergency childcare funding that he's been sitting on for a couple of months now, and just needs to be out there and deployed, because we have seen so many closures in childcare centers. You've heard stories tonight about this. My friend Beth Starks, her center is certainly open, and she's working hard along with all of her team members, but it is a struggle. If you look across especially rural New York State, where we already had childcare deserts as it was, and this is a major problem, 30 to 50% of them have been closing, depending on the counties. So I think this is truly an issue that we have to be very focused on. Let me also say that right now, our federal government is looking at spending billions of dollars. Much of it is certainly to prop up some of our businesses, but right now we are spending money at the federal level that disincents people from going back to work. Instead, let's have the federal government spend $50 billion or more so that we can have childcare, and that those people can go back to work and provide for their families and become, productive members of our society again. That is critical, and that is money that we paid back to us again and again. As has been told to me many times in the past, for every dollar that is invested in childcare, we get a $1.86 return on that investment. So you're talking billions of dollars that could be returned to our economy with this investment in childcare. So I strongly urge our congressional delegation to pass this funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Borrello. Next up was New York State Senator Andrew Gennardes. Unfortunately, I'm distracted because we were just chatting. He had to leave to be at another forum. So, but we so appreciate that he took time out to be with us tonight, and he heard our message and he's carrying our message. So thank you to Senator Gennardes for being with us tonight. And now I'm going to turn things over to Gladys Jones. She is a home-based provider in Staten Island. She is leader of ECE on the Move, which is a network of more than 600 home-based providers in New York City. She is a force of nature, and we are so glad and grateful that she's here today to close us out. Gladys, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay, thank you for the honor of allowing me to be part of this important roundtable. My name is Gladys Jones, and I'm an early childhood educator in a residential setting, also known as family child care. Been around for almost 2 decades. We all have a story. You have heard my colleagues, our parents, and our great leaders. I will speak through the lens of a child care provider, not about me, but the way we are living in this sector. The pandemic, the unknown, took grip of our greatest fear, sickness, death. One suffering, not one being more important or less than the other in any industry. Child care has not been a priority of the nation. Today, we find ourselves sitting with all you great leaders to try to resurrect a very essential component in human survival to take care of our young human capital. But in order to do that, we have to take care of the folks that do the services. Our world in childcare is not new, but so much a part of our core of being as humans that has been taken for granted. The field has come together to support each other in public health, but much more is needed for all modalities that care for children. Family childcare, daycare centers, programs for school-aged children. We need investment in children for their care to become healthy. We must be able to survive long-term. As we move forward through the phases of reopening, reorganizing, reimagining, recovery, and resurrecting, New York State, or the world for that matter, will not be able to revive if we do not support and invest in families. Organizations and childcare providers, we are the ones up to bring up childcare systems. SBA, loans, Kid Act 1, 2, PPP, not touching the need to be able to sustain ourselves in our daily lives, appreciated by those that were able to get it and utilize. But must be pointed out that in order for resurrection, recovery of our great state, we must be whole as caregivers. The $50 billion investment will be a big help in the next federal relief package in order to continue our road to resurrection of childcare. Being survivors trying to get back to normalcy is not an easy task. However, investment, $50 billion will go a long way to save early care and education from extinction. Please help us from being fossils and invest to save us. $50 billion in the Childcare is Essential Act is a bipartisan legacy. Save childcare. Investment is a must. See said puede, yes we can. I have faith, spiritually and in humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Gladys. I hate following remarks by Gladys. Thank you, thank you. I want to just close things with a request to everyone on the phone and on the call to take a couple of steps. First of all, right now in Washington, negotiations are ongoing about getting either the Childcare is Essential Act or another piece of legislation with significant investment in childcare passed. And it, these conversations are happening now. They may actually be finished by the end of this week. So now is our moment when we all need to get on the phone or take to your computer and write to your representative, your U.S. representative, and also to our state senators, our U.S. senators, Senator Gillibrand, who we know is a supporter, and Senator Schumer, who is also a supporter, but they are going to be engaged in really tough negotiations. And our message to them needs to be they cannot back down on childcare, that childcare, the industry, the teachers, the educators, the children, the families are relying on them to not back down and to not leave the negotiating table with anything less than $50 billion for childcare. There are a lot of issues that we need to address, as is very clear from the chat, and this is a really complex issue. We have to keep our providers, our educators safe. We need to keep our children and our families safe. And we need to enable parents to parent and work and do all the different things they need to do. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and I look forward to all of us getting together to hashing, to continuing this conversation. But for now, please contact your congressperson, contact our U.S. senators, and tell them do not back down on childcare. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.